Hello,
Hey there. How's it going?
it's going well. So today we are going to discuss another topic, you and I.
Sounds good. What topic do you have in mind for today?
So today I have in mind GMO, GMO food, genetically modified food. So my question is, I, I, my concern is I've never understood, uh, you know, the introduction of GMO, and I am not in favor of it, but I mean, I'm not in favor of it, and I would like to know what's the. I would like to understand the perspective of the persons who hold that position. GMO is necessary.
Sure. Supporters of GMOs often argue that genetically modified crops can increase food production, improve nutritional content, and reduce the need for pesticides. They believe these benefits can help address food security and environmental challenges, especially in a growing world population. Does that help clarify their perspective?
Okay, before we do that, let's start with the basics. First of all, explain to our audience what is GMO. Give us the basic. What is the GMO?
Absolutely. GMO stands for genetically modified organism. It refers to any organism whose genetic material has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. This is often done to introduce new traits like resistance to pests, herbicides, or harsh environmental conditions, or to enhance nutritional content. Essentially, it's about altering the DNA to achieve specific desired characteristics.
Oh, okay. Altering the DNA. Interesting. So basically, what people are doing are they're changing the nature of food. Isn't that the case? To put it in simple terms.
Yes, in simple terms, they're modifying the genetic makeup of the food to achieve desired traits. This can mean making crops that are more resistant to pests, tolerate harsh weather better, or even enhance nutritional value. So, in a way, they're changing the natural characteristics of the food.
Okay, let's focus on the point that enhancing nutritional value. Uh, in what way the GMO have a? Are you saying they have a higher value compared to the natural food?
In some cases, GMOs can be engineered to have higher nutritional value compared to their non GMO counterparts. For example, golden rice is a type of genetically modified rice that has been engineered to produce beta carotene, which the body can convert into vitamin A. This is intended to address vitamin A deficiencies in regions where rice is a staple food. So, yes, certain GMOs can be designed to offer enhanced nutritional benefits.
Okay.
It,
But the introduction of GMO is very recent, isn't it?
yes, compared to traditional agriculture, GMOs are relatively recent. They began to be widely developed and used in the 1990s, so they've been around for a few decades now.
Yeah, but so what's the point? For thousands of years, humans have been using natural crops as a source of food, and I don't see the necessity, okay, of introducing new technologies to alter the DNA of crops.
I understand where you're coming from. Many people feel that natural crops have sustained humanity for millennia.
Yeah, and the point is,
I'm sorry, but you've hit the monthly limit for
okay,
advanced voice. You can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
all right, let's go. Okay, let's continue the discussion. So my concern is humans have been using natural crops for thousands of years, and uh, and some people decided it is
I get
necessary
what you're
to.
saying. Humans have been cultivating and selectively breeding crops for centuries without genetic modification. The argument against GMOs is often that we don't fully understand the long term effects of altering DNA in ways that wouldn't happen naturally. Some worry about potential health risks, environmental impact, and corporate control over seeds. Are you more concerned about health effects, the environment, or something else?
I'm more concerned about health effects because as a human being, we are consuming an altered DNA. And could you explain what are the health effects of GMO? Are there any health effects?
So far, studies haven't shown clear evidence that GMOs cause direct harm to human health. Regulatory agencies like the FDA, WHO, and EFSA generally consider approved GMOs safe to eat. However, there are concerns about potential indirect effects. For example, some GMOs are engineered to be resistant to herbicides, which can lead to increased pesticide use, and long term exposure to those chemicals might have health risks. There's also debate about potential allergenicity, though no major cases have been confirmed. Since you're not worried about health effects, are you more concerned about the environmental or economic impact of GMOs?
No, I am more concerned about health effects. I'm trying to understand the other side of the argument. I'm trying to understand from that perspective, and I tend to believe uh, if things are natural, I think we should keep them natural. And I would like to understand their arguments and to have a better perspective on GMOs. So,
That makes sense. The main health concerns people raise about GMOs are usually theoretical rather than proven.
okay, but the other point that I wanted to point out is hmm, the studies are not really a, a basis to prove anything. Studies are just look at the short-term effect, but how about the long term? Have proven that there are no health effects. But how credible are those studies? Because those studies are very short for the short term, you know, uh, but not for the long term. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Most studies on GMOs have focused on short term effects, like toxicity and allergenicity. But long term studies on human health are harder to conduct. Since GMOs have only been widely consumed for a few decades, we don't have the kind of multi generational data we do for traditional foods. Skeptics argue that regulatory agencies rely on studies funded by biotech companies, which
Mhm.
could introduce bias. On the other hand, independent studies generally support the same conclusion that GMOs are no more dangerous than conventional crops. But you're right to question how much we really know about long term effects. Do you think the lack of long term studies is a reason to avoid GMOs altogether? Or do you think more independent research could change your perspective?
Okay, my position is independent research or any studies are not really going to take into consideration into consideration
I see where you're going with this.
the
If you don't
long-term
fully trust
effects.
studies, whether independent or industry funded, then your concern is more about the fundamental idea of altering nature in ways we don't fully understand. Even if research says GMOs are safe now, there's no way to guarantee unforeseen consequences won't show up later. That's a fair perspective. Some people take the precautionary principle. If we don't know the long term effects for sure, why take the risk? Do you think there's any situation where GMOs might be justified, like solving food shortages or improving nutrition? Or do you think we should stick strictly to natural methods?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should really stick to the natural method because uh, it's very harmful to go against nature, and we don't know the unintended consequences. So it's wise and intelligent to just focus and stay with the natural process instead of trying to deviate from that, and that can have a recipe for disaster.
I get that. It's a cautious and logical approach. Why take unnecessary risks when nature's already provided a system that works? The argument against GMOs from this perspective is that even if they seem beneficial in the short term, we don't fully understand the long term ecological and biological consequences. It's kind of like how past scientific advancements, like certain pesticides or industrial chemicals, were once thought to be safe, but later turned out to have serious consequences. Do you think there's too much human interference in nature in general? Or is it just with food that you feel strongly about?
I think okay. Let me before I answer that, I just want to also say that even those studies are not really, unbiased because most of the studies are conducted by companies, are supported by the same companies who are trying to, push the GMOs. So they are not reliable at all. Okay. And I'm going to give an example where when the first time I came in the US, what I noticed was the taste of the fruits are of lesser quality. When I try to eat a fruit, the taste is very, it's not there. The quality is not there. So is that from the GMO? Is that because they use a GMO technique, or what's the problem here?
That's a really interesting observation, and you're not alone in noticing that. The lack of flavor in many fruits and vegetables in the US is often linked to large scale industrial farming practices, including selective breeding for higher yields, longer shelf life, and resistance to pests. While some of these crops are GMO, many are not. It's more about how they're grown and processed. For example, tomatoes in the US are often bred to be firm and last longer in transport, but that comes at the cost of flavor. The same goes for strawberries, apples, and other fruits. They may look perfect, but don't always taste as rich as naturally grown ones. So while GMOs could play a role, the bigger issue is the way modern agriculture prioritizes efficiency over taste. Have you noticed a difference when eating organic or locally grown fruits compared to mass produced ones?
Uh, I think yes. In terms of the taste, when I use organic, they have a better taste. It tastes much better than some of the other. I'm not quite sure, but usually what I
Yeah, that
notice
makes
is
sense. Organic fruits are usually grown with more traditional methods, often in smaller batches and with fewer artificial interventions. That can lead to better soil quality and more natural ripening, which affects taste. In contrast, mass produced fruits, whether GMO or not, are often picked before they're fully ripe and then artificially ripened during transport, which can make them look good but taste bland.
okay.
It sounds like you value not just natural food, but also quality and taste. Do you try to stick to organic as much as possible, or do you find it hard to avoid mass produced food?
At this point, I just gave up because there are no safe food. So I gave up in terms of finding organic because even the organic ones turn out to be not organic. So there's no point of pursuing that goal anymore.
I get that frustration. With the way food production works today, it's hard to be 100% sure what you're getting. Even with organic labels, there's always the question of how strictly they're enforced and whether large scale organic farming is really any different from conventional farming.
Okay,
Do you think
so
there's any way to regain control over food quality,
uh,
like growing your own or sourcing from trusted local farmers?
all
Or
right,
do you feel like the system is too far gone?
let me go back to the origins of GMO. I think the origins was of GMO was more motivated by economic reason than than anything else. Don't you agree with that? So it was actually to make more money, to make more profit. That was the you know cause. That was the cause of the GMO introduction. Don't you agree with that? It's taking forever. Toot, 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 toot,
The
toot.
idea was to increase crop yields, reduce costs, and make farming more efficient, all of which translate to higher profits for companies and farmers. The biotechnology companies that developed GMOs had clear financial incentives: larger yields, reduced pesticide use, and crops that could withstand harsher conditions were all aimed at boosting profits in the agricultural industry. At the same time, proponents of GMOs argue that the economic aspect was also tied to solving larger global issues, like food security, especially with a growing population. But it's hard to deny that profit played a huge role in pushing GMOs forward. Do you think that economic motivation has overshadowed the ethical or long term environmental considerations?
Yes, I believe that a lot of times corporations they don't take into consideration the long-term effects of GMO, and they are more focused on profitability, making more profits, I guess. So they're looking at only from that that perspective, which is very detrimental to the health of humans as a whole, because they are looking only from economic side of things, but they are not looking at what they will introduce will have effect on humans in society as a whole. So they are very short-sighted in that sense, but they are not looking for the long-term implications of their actions. So I think that's the main concern, the main argument that I have against a lot of people, that they introduce new inorganic things to somehow improve the condition of food or any other thing.
That's a strong point. The profit driven approach often overlooks the broader long term consequences on human health, society, and the environment. Many critics argue that companies prioritize quick gains and market expansion while disregarding potential risks that might only show up years later. It's a short sighted mindset where the immediate benefits of higher yields and reduced costs seem to outweigh the uncertain future consequences. The worry is that the rapid introduction of these technologies without adequate consideration of their full impact could lead to irreversible changes, not just in agriculture, but in ecosystems and even our bodies. You're basically advocating for a more responsible, long term approach where companies take a more holistic view of how their innovations will affect people down the line. Do you think there's a way to balance innovation with caution, or should the focus shift entirely back to more traditional natural practices?
Okay, let's hold on first. I wanted to ask. Let's going back to the origins of GMO. When Who invented the GMO technology?
The technology behind GMOs evolved over time and wasn't the work of just one person, but rather a combination of developments in genetic engineering and biotechnology. The first significant step toward GMOs came in the 1970s, when scientists like Herbert Boyer and Stanley Cohen developed the technique of recombinant DNA, which allowed genes from one organism to be inserted into another. This laid the groundwork for genetically modified organisms. The first GMO crops were created in the 1980s, with the first commercial GMO crop being a variety of tomato engineered to resist a virus. In the early 1990s, companies like Monsanto, now part of Bayer, began commercializing GMO crops like herbicide resistant soybeans and BT corn. So, the technology was built on a combination of academic research and corporate development. In short, it was a blend of university led breakthroughs and corporate investment aimed at making agriculture more efficient and profitable. Does that timeline and origin make sense with what you've heard?
Okay, so were there people in America? I mean, they were Americans, or where they are from?
Yes, the key figures behind the early development of genetic engineering and GMOs were indeed Americans. Herbert Boyer and Stanley Cohen, who pioneered recombinant DNA technology in the 1970s, were both American scientists. Boyer was a professor at the University of California, San Francisco, and Cohen was from Stanford University. The commercialization of GMOs in the 1980s and 1990s, which involved the first genetically modified crops, was largely driven by companies like Monsanto, which is
Mm,
based in the
and Santa.
US.
Yeah.
The widespread adoption of GMOs in agriculture became a major part of American farming, with the technology spreading globally over time. So, the initial groundwork and commercialization of GMO technology had strong roots in the US. Do you think the American approach to innovation played a role in the way GMOs were developed and marketed?
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but another question is, if we can genetically modify food, can the same technology apply to humans? Can human genome be modified also?
Yes, the technology behind genetic modification can, in theory, be applied to humans as well. This area of research is known as gene editing, and the most well known tool used for this is CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR allows scientists to precisely edit genes by cutting DNA at specific locations, which can be used to remove, add, or alter DNA in living organisms, including humans. Gene editing in humans has already been experimented with in certain medical contexts, such as editing genes to potentially treat genetic disorders like sickle cell anemia or certain types of inherited blindness. However, it's still in very early stages, and there are significant ethical, safety, and societal concerns about the long-term effects, especially when it comes to editing embryos or germline cells, which could be passed down to future generations. While the technology offers the possibility to eliminate genetic diseases, it also raises complex questions about the potential for designer babies, unintended genetic consequences, or even social inequality based on genetic modifications. Would you be comfortable with gene editing in humans for medical purposes, or do you think it's crossing a line?
No, I would not be in favor of it at all. So, but I'll have to go back to the GMOs because when you change it, so when they change, okay,
I understand your concerns.
all right,
The idea of editing the human genome touches on some pretty deep ethical and philosophical issues. Now, getting back to GMOs,
okay, so let's hear me out first, okay? So my question is, when they genetically modified food, because some foods they contain really elements that can help a human, fight against disease, right? But if you change that, do they sometimes remove those elements to make it weaker, and therefore, when the human eats those food, the human also become weak? Weak. Is that fair to say? Are you there? Hello. Some issues. Let's wrap it up. It looks like you have some issues with the technical issues. So my question is, when people change the DNA of the food, uh, which is changing some of the properties of the food, and which help people in terms of fighting disease, and which are the good nutrients for their body. Okay, do do those scientists change or downgrade the food nutrients?
I understand your question. When scientists modify the DNA of crops, the goal is often to improve certain traits like disease resistance, yield, or pest resistance. But the effect on the nutritional value can vary. In many cases, the changes are not directly aimed at improving nutrients, but there have been instances where genetic modifications have enhanced specific nutrients. For example, genetically modified golden rice has been engineered to produce more vitamin A to help address deficiencies in developing countries. However, it's possible that modifying genes for traits like pest resistance or shelf life could unintentionally alter the nutritional profile of the food.
Okay.
For example, some critics argue that
Okay, if that's the case, right? When you change the nutrients, the value of the nutrients, and when people eat that food, they wouldn't have the enough nutrients for their body. Therefore, they would be weakened against any other diseases. Is it fair to say to put it that way?
you're getting at. If GMOs were designed to remove essential nutrients from food, then yes, that could lead to deficiencies and weaken the immune system. But in reality, most GMO foods are actually modified to improve yield, resistance to pests, or even enhance nutrition. For example, Golden rice was created to have more vitamin A to help with deficiencies. That's
Okay. Okay. So this has been a quick discussion of AI regarding a GMO topic. Of course, I'm trying to learn, but uh, it's a very complicated topic. But I have some questions that I need to know. So hopefully, we'll be able to discuss it further next time. But so far, we kind of have an idea about what the GMOs are, right? And also their implications for humans' health, and also for the environment. You can comment if you have a different perspective. I want to hear from you.